Mikhail Gorbachev. Who is this guy? Well, he isn't always the brightest light bulb in the store made specifically for light bulbs. Which doesn't really make any sense when you think about it, because, like, if a store had some light bulbs that were brighter than others, why would they not just get rid of the dimmer ones? I mean, I guess if they wanted to have, like, dim lights for some reason, but, there's always the option of those, like, adjustable lights, which I find extremely cool. Anyway, the main reason he's in our book is because he helped bring an end to the Cold War. Most conservative Americans will say that Reagan was the main reason for ending the Cold War, but Gorbachev played a big role. Gorbachev was the fourth Soviet leader during Reagan's presidency. Relations between the two countries were extremely tense, as you can imagine, before he assumed power in 1985. After he assumed power, the tension was lessened between the two countries. As the 1988 presidential election approached, the Democrats' prospects of winning the Cold War were considered good. If Gorbachev wanted to continue the Cold War, he would have waited until the presidential election to see if American policy might change before surrendering to any pressure generated by Reagan's military buildup. But he didn't do that, which is why he played such a big role in ending the Cold War. Instead of doing that, Gorbachev and Reagan pursued a different course. In a city that I cannot pronounce, in 1986, they just about agreed to eliminate their country's nuclear arsenals. Then, in 1987, they signed the historic Intermediate Range Nuclear Forces Treaty, the first superpower agreement to reduce nuclear weapons. As for Reagan's challenge to Gorbachev to tear down the Berlin Wall, it received relatively minor media coverage at the time. Early on, Gorbachev hinted that he would no longer apply the Brezhnev Doctrine, which I pronounced extremely wrong, which was basically something that the Soviets used to justify military intervention in other countries. Gorbachev announced measures taken specifically by himself to reduce the country's armed forces by 500,000 troops and to withdraw 50,000 soldiers from Eastern Europe, which is a huge deal for Russia at this time. In the words of Soviet scholar Archie Brown, he thus effectively willed the end of communist regimes in Eastern Europe. So we can see by these things that Gorbachev is a pretty good guy, even though he might not look like one. Once the dramatic changes began to unfold, Gorbachev abided by his new policy and let them run their course without interference. Reagan's contribution to ending the Cold War was also important, but not as important as conservatives would have us believe. I find this quote hilarious because he's using a movie. Anyway, back to what I have written down. While we can see by some of these quotes, mainly this one, that Gorbachev is not the brightest light bulb in the store made specifically for light bulbs, his overall historical impact is positive. And that is Mikhail Gorbachev. He's got a funny birthmark on his head, which is probably the best part about this whole presentation, is that birthmark. Anyway, thanks for listening, even though you were kind of forced to.